The story of Romeo and Juliet has been done in so many ways, from the classic stage performance to the modern setting to even zombies. Now we get this tale from the point of view of vampires in Netflix's series First Kill. Should this one be at the top of your watch list? When it's time for teenage vampire Juliet to make her first kill so she can take her place among a powerful vampire family, she sets her sights on a new girl in town named Calliope. But much to Juliet's surprise, Calliope is a vampire hunter from a family of celebrated slayers. Both find that the other won't be so easy to kill, but unfortunately, way too easy to fall for. This is an 8-episode teenage soap opera that surprisingly doesn't have a crap ton of angst to it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the pining and the brooding is still present, but not to the degree that you may imagine for a show like this. So the Romeo and Juliet angle isn't downplayed at all in this. I mean, the show fully embraces the theme and even acknowledges it along the way. We watch forbidden love play out between Juliet and Calliope. While they may not be necessarily star-crossed lovers, they are certainly at philosophical odds when it comes to biting people and drinking their blood. And yet, despite that, they have an intense attraction to one another, which of course we know is going to lead to difficulties to say the least. But the forbidden love angle plays out in more ways than just the couple, which then adds a bit more dimension to the storytelling. These other relationships don't get nearly as much focus, nor should they, as they're just background stories, but they are present. Now, Juliet has a best friend named Ben, and I really like the dynamic that she has with him. The relationship is a great example of friendship, even if it might be slightly unrealistic. The conflict in this is obviously the vampire family and the hunter family being at odds, so I certainly expected to see some clashes between the humans and the bloodsuckers. But the show introduces other monsters in this, which then expands the lore of the show greatly. I liked the variety of monsters that is shown, even if they're not a major part of the overall story. Now, their inclusion does work its way into the larger narrative, making the show something more than just a vampire love story. And throughout this, there's a running social commentary about family, love, and acceptance. Now, I don't think any of them are exceptionally addressed or even examined too deeply, but the show at least attempts to have some relevance for today's world. I also enjoyed the soundtrack within the show. There are a ton of pop songs playing. Most of them are melancholy or brooding lyrically, but they had great melodies and they fit the tone of the scenes. A couple of times they felt repetitive, but that wasn't a major detriment. Now, as much as I really wanted to like this show, I just found myself liking it less and less as it went along. And a lot of it comes down to the writing. It's overly simplified and basic, lacking a lot of actual depth to the storytelling. The dialogue's really cringy most of the time, and because of how the actors are directed, most of the time they come across in either one of two ways. They're either overly melodramatic or emotionlessly robotic. And when it's the latter, the actors are stiff and unnatural, just giving this very distant feel to the performance. And when they go over the top, especially with a few of the family members on both sides, they just become laughable. As the story progresses and Jules and Cal get themselves deeper into their feelings, and into drama too, the situations begin to become ridiculous. They're even bordering on the absurd. In Jules' family, there are some things that her dad does that are just comical, but they're not meant to be. And her sister is like a caricature of a spoiled Southern belle. She's rich, pretty, stuck up beyond belief, and proud to be so. But Cal's family also has ridiculousness too. Her brothers, especially the younger one, are just full of machismo and bravado, which is just silly to watch, especially as they grow in intensity off of each other as their adrenaline rises. Now, the family dynamics of both sides are fiercely loyal and protective, so it is admirable to see those qualities. But much of the time, these feelings come across as forced and then unbelievable. There are special effects that are utilized in this, and most of them are practical. There is the occasional use of CGI, but no matter which is being employed, they all look pretty fake and then overall are just lackluster. Sometimes they become laughable at how low budget they look. And then to make matters worse, the effects, they're inconsistent in their quality. When there's a kill, we typically get to see some blood on a mouth or maybe in a wound area, but sometimes there are some very gnarly deaths, and the blood and the gore, they're just pretty much non-existent. It just sort of disappears, even though what we should be seeing is massive carnage. Now, as cheesy as a lot of this is, there is one brief moment where the show almost felt like it was embracing the cheese. Cal's brothers are watching a video with his character named Arch McQueen. This scene knows that it's absurd, and it fully goes after it. And I wish that it could have been something that went on longer, because the stupidity of it just put an awkward smile on my face. So like I said, this is 8 episodes, and they range in length from 40 minutes to an hour. And the pace is consistent in progressing the story forward, but because the story lacks a ton of depth, there are portions of this that are just a lot of setup for little return. And the way this ends leaves everything in flux with no resolutions in place. It feels like this is just midway through the season. Now, I wouldn't say it ends on a cliffhanger because there's not really any of that type of suspense. It's just that all of the story elements are unresolved. I mean, it's just incomplete. So overall, First Kill succeeds in bringing a new twist to an old tale. I'm not saying it's unique, but the story had promise. The representation and inclusion the show provides are wonderful, and I do like the social commentary this was attempting to address. And the soundtrack is fun too, fitting the tone and vibe of the scenes effectively. Unfortunately though, the writing is overly simplified, creating dialogue that's cringy and unnatural. The actors fluctuate between melodramatic and robotic, never being consistent. And the cinematography and special effects feel very made for TV, which causes the entire production to be lackluster. And then when you take all of that and end in a way that makes every story arc feel incomplete, this becomes a very unsatisfying watching experience. It's not really any sex, just some heavy making out, no nudity, a bunch of profanity, and a lot of violence. I give First Kill 2 out of 5 couches. What's a favorite vampire show or movie of yours? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.